2 years after the sinking of the USS Discovery, with Solid Snake confirmed dead and framed as the primary suspect, new FOXHOUND recruit Jack, codenamed Raiden, is sent to infiltrate the offshore decontamination facility known as Big Shell, constructed shortly after the sinking of the Discovery, which, according to the government, spilled thousands of gallons of crude oil into the New York harbor. Raiden is given orders to rescue the President of the United States and other hostages from the Sons of Liberty, a terrorist group who has seized control of Big Shell. The terrorists demand $30 billion and claim that if this demand is not met, they will destroy Big Shell, igniting the oil spill in the harbor and burning the chlorides used for cleanup, creating high levels of dioxins that would wipe out the bay's ecosystem and become the worst environmental disaster in history. Meanwhile, U.S. Navy SEAL Team 10 carries out its own rescue mission, which is quickly thwarted.
After coming face-to-face with Vamp, one of the terrorists with Sons of Liberty, Raiden meets Iroquois Plissken, a surviving member of SEAL Team 10, who takes him to Peter Stillman, an explosives expert who reveals that Fatman, his former student, now with the terrorists, has rigged Big Shell to explode. He gives instructions on how to disarm the bombs, but doing so triggers a countdown on 2 larger explosives, one on both cores of the shell. And while Raiden is able to disable the explosives in Shell 1's core, Stillman is killed in the explosion on Shell 2. Raiden then confronts Fatman and kills him before another large bomb detonates, saving Big Shell from total destruction. He then continues with his mission to rescue the president.
We're now introduced to our primary POV character, codenamed Raiden.
Yep.
Jack is
Raiden.
his real name.
It's 2 kanji for electricity, by the
Yeah.
way. Rai, as in like Raichu or Raiko.
Sure. Yeah.
Rai, and then Den, as in like, well, Densha or Den. They both mean basically like electricity.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating because, at least in part, his name was not supposed to be written with kanji. It was supposed to be written in katakana.
Katakana, right.
But
yeah.
Raiden sounds too close to Raiden, which was Osama bin Laden's name. So they didn't want you to be playing as somebody who was named, possibly could confuse it to Raiden, which was in the news at the time. So
Yes.
this was actually one of the last minute changes. Bro, okay, we voice acted this game. I know you can't change the name, but what can we do? We're going to spell his name in kanji. And that way you'll avoid the pitfall of, oh, I misread it wrong. Is this, or my dad or mom misread it wrong. Oh, they think I'm playing as Osama bin Laden.
Which would just be insane.
Wild.
Like, I mean, you're just being, this is the kind of thing.
But the lawyers had to be like extra careful.
Yes.
You know, every
That's essentially what I'm getting at is having worked in a corporate structure like that, like sometimes they just go like totally overboard in trying to protect the company to a point where it's like, no one's gonna freaking mistake that. Are you crazy? But they're just like trying to be ultra conservative and careful about it.
And I could even see a lawyer being like, it's like, okay, and change your character's name. And the creative director being like, we can't do that. And he goes, oh, it's your funeral. Okay, all right. If you don't want to do it, you know, I'm not responsible for, okay, I'll do it. Fine, dude, I'll do it.
Right.
You know, because like, that's how things go.
So I took a lot of notes for this section. Some of it is just me more or less noticing specific setups and being like, okay, that's a setup I might not have noticed first time through. I'm going to take note of that. So
I'm so glad I played this game a second time. I'm like, I missed so much on my first playthrough. This game, I am now of the firm opinion that this game must be experienced twice.
Yes.
Once you understand what's happening, and you play this game again, I am seeing the theme. It's all over this place, game, everywhere.
Yeah, it's one of those games I also would recommend playing at least twice. I mean, back to back kind of twice, not like quickly. Years later. I mean, like play it, finish it, understand what's going for, then go back through again and see how they built up to that. All the things you possibly missed because you weren't sure where it was going at first.
Pretend it's a near game.
Yes.
Pretend it's a Yoko Taro game.
So, my first note here was as Raiden gets ready to infiltrate that like gate, that fence that's underwater, right?
Oh yeah.
He notices that there's already been a cut made in that gate before.
Yeah.
So he's been told, like SEAL Team 10 is coming in via helicopter.
Yep.
There's no underwater infiltration by anyone. It should just be me.
Right.
But somebody has come through before and cut this fence right where I'm about to go in.
And the colonel's like, no, nonsense. Nobody's supposed to be here. Nobody else but you.
Yeah, the Campbell.
Like, yeah, I hear you telling me that, and I'm telling you someone else is here.
Yeah. So our old friend, Colonel Roy Campbell, right? He tells us that's not possible.
That's not possible.
When Raiden says that.
Not possible.
He says, there's very particular wording there that I think is really important. You could come across this and go like, oh, he just doesn't believe.
Right.
He's not
inconceivable.
He's not saying like, wait a second, like that can't be.
Yeah.
He's trying to tell us that's not possible.
Yeah. Don't consider that. Delete that from your mind. Yeah.
I'm sorry if it feels like I'm like restating things over and over again from previous episodes. You can't plan for every contingency is a real part of where I'm going in my analysis of this.
Yeah.
That this is the pitfall of anyone who thinks they've got things under control.
Right.
Anyone who is super confident that they've thought it all through, you just can't do that. There's always something. And we talked about this a ton in BioShock. It was a huge theme there. It's a huge theme here again. The Colonel is very confident in saying what Raiden just saw with his own eyes is not possible.
Not only it's not true, it can't be, it's not possible.
Yes. So I want to set that up for later.
Don't believe your lying eyes, Raiden.
I also wanted to say, and I'm not going to harp on this one too much. I'm just going to slip a quick mention here, and then we'll talk about it in depth much, much later. But I think it's important to just remember how similar this mission on Big Shell is structurally in as far as what happens and when and in what sequence to the first game's mission on Shadow Moses. Raiden infiltrates underwater.
Yeah.
He has to get on an elevator as almost like the first thing that like goes up, right? To kind of like, so the first part of the mission is in the first game is sneaking past those two soldiers in the white and getting on that elevator and going up. You follow Liquid up that elevator, right? There's even some shots there that are very reminiscent. The reveal of Raiden and the reveal of Snake. Not reveal of Snake, but like they're both wearing masks as they infiltrate, right? And then they take those masks off as they get into like the real part of the mission past that first sort of small sequence. There's a lot of that, and I'm not going to point them all out. I'm going to let you look into them and like connect them. But there's a lot of that. And it's something to keep in mind as we keep going through this. So just keep in mind some of the similarities between the two. Okay. Did you have
I do.
A note?
But I don't know when to bring this one up.
Okay.
Well, I wonder if this one maybe would be better later.
Okay.
Actually. So I'm going to pass it now.
Took a note here on some dialogue. All right, Raiden, you've already covered infiltration in VR training. He says, I've completed 300 missions in VR. I feel like some kind of legendary mercenary. So there's a big
that's great.
There's a big emphasis here on the fact that Raiden has gone through like extensive VR training.
Like years and years of just VR training.
A lot of VR training. That in and of itself is a point of interest, but there's another thing that really adds to this that some people might not have picked up on or might not know. So the game Metal Gear Solid VR Missions, known as the Metal Gear Solid Special Missions in the PAL region, is an expansion to Metal Gear Solid, right? Released for the PlayStation in 1999, a separate game from Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid VR Missions. The VR missions were released in Japan as the third disc of Metal Gear Solid Integral, an expanded version of the original game that includes most of the changes and additions made to the original Western release. So you could call this almost like, you know, a lot of these games, they have an edition that comes out after the launch edition. In this case, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty is the launch version of the game, and then Substance was another version that came out a little later, and it had some additional content with it. So they did that with the first game in Japan and released the Metal Gear Solid VR missions as a third disc in that package. But it was a standalone game in the West.
Interesting.
So VR missions, the North American version, was repurposed as a standalone game. The VR missions in the game are referenced in a flashback in Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, which we're going to get up to today. And a lot of the scenes, which I thought were funny, we didn't bring this up last time, like when Snake sees Ocelot, he like has flashbacks to Ocelot, but it's like the PS1 graphics of Ocelot.
And they made the footage grainy, and they kind of did a crossfade overlay a little bit.
Yes.
And they tried to cover up a little bit of how bad it looked. Or in my opinion, how dope it looked, but that you can't tell what Revolver Ocelot looks like.
Right.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. And it happens a few more times in the game.
Yes, they do it several times. And one of the times is when they're showing footage of Raiden's VR he's talking about. And it's from Metal Gear Solid VR missions.
Oh, fun.
Which is Solid Snake. You're playing a Solid Snake in these VR missions, right? And there's a whole bunch of them. So when he's referencing, he like has specific numbers. Well, let's get to that scene when it comes up, but like sneaking mission 60 things like that, right? That's an actual call to sneaking mission 60 in Metal Gear Solid VR missions.
So
that's what they're showing when he's talking about it.
Kojima is going to do something very interesting here. He is going to tie you, the player, directly to Raiden now.
Yes.
In a way that maybe is very uncomfortable. I'll get to this more when we meet somebody a little bit later on. But Kojima, just have this in your mind that it's entirely possible that Kojima is trying to call you out as the player while you're playing this game. And there's a few specific ways that he does that that we're going to get into a little bit later.
Yeah.
Did you get the line of, what was it? Not nerd.
Yes, that's literally my next note.
Okay. Yeah, read the line there real quick.
So Campbell's explaining the nodes, which are these little computer terminals throughout the levels, and you interact with them to download essentially your map for the, what do you call it? It's on the HUD. It's like the little mini map.
Yeah.
Right? Like in order to get the mini map for each sort of like section of the big shell, you have to go to the nodes and download the maps.
Yeah.
So he's explaining that mechanic. And as he's explaining it, it's so silly.
Now, the first time I played it, I thought nothing of it. Although I think different things of it now.
Yeah. Raiden interrupts him and says, "Did you say nerd?" He's like, "Not nerd, node."
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's what he said.
Now, that once again, that line is interesting, and just keep it in your mind. Don't just forget that it was said. That line was put there on purpose.
Yeah.
On purpose. You have to go to the nerds and download knowledge. And not just this. Actually, I'm going to go through. There's a whole allegory in this game. It's wonderful. But you are going to, the fact that he heard a nerd and not node is weird. It's just out of place. It's out of place. But it's all going to kind of converge on you, the player, whether you're a nerd or not, I suppose. But that slip was intentional. By Kojima, not by the Colonel.
Sure.
Of course,
yeah.
Colonel's like pissed.
Not nerd.
Why do you think I talk about nerds, dude? And then my next note is about Rosemary.
Yes.
Right?
So this is, I mean, even on the initial playthrough, this was ringing all kinds of alarm bells.
Okay.
Like, what the fetch are you doing?
What's going on here? However,
this is leverage for sure.
Having played the first game, I know, you're right. Yeah, that's like Collateral or something.
Yeah.
Having played the first game, I rolled my eyes, but I wasn't like, okay, this shouldn't be here in a Metal Gear game.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, okay, this is the girl. And of course, it's a girl who's interested in us. And oh, great. Okay, isn't this wonderful? Rosemary seems to literally be Raiden's
girlfriend,
yeah. Right? And of several years, I think.
Yeah, they've known each other for a while. Yeah.
And all of a sudden the Colonel's like, all right, here's I'm going to introduce you to somebody right now. And she's like working out terms with the Colonel on air, like live during the mission. Like, okay, Colonel, but here's my one, I'll do this for you. But, and it's like, well, the mission's already going, dude. What are you doing? But the Colonel's like, listen, she's here for a specific reason. You don't need to worry about it. Just do your job. Right. And then immediately Rosemary is just like, do you remember what happened on April 30th? And Raiden's like, what? Just put yourself in Raiden's shoes. It's wild. What's happening here with Rosemary and why she's here? And Raiden calls it out immediately. She has no experience doing anything like this at all in any way.
Yep.
Why is she here? Don't you worry about that, soldier. Put your head down and get to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have her here for my own reasons. You don't worry about it.
I loved that line because, again, this is something that you could be like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, is this one of those?
In the first game, I was.
Yeah. Is this one of those things? And this is another thing that's so confusing about Metal Gear for me and why I'm always like feeling like torn this way and that. Like, should I be questioning this? Should I not? Is this stupid or is this purposeful? And because there are plenty of examples of it just being stupid. So like, you wouldn't be faulted for going, this is stupid.
That is what I initially thought. Absolutely.
But I will say to you playing the game for the first time, like your instinct to question this is correct.
It is correct.
Allow yourself to do it as Raiden does. So
you are Raiden. Don't forget this.
Yes.
You are Raiden.
Yes. So what the Colonel says is the Foxhound analyst that was supposed to take part in this mission was in an accident. Rosemary was brought in as a replacement. Okay, this girl who has zero experience in this kind of mission analysis is chosen as the replacement for the original Foxhound agent. That makes no sense.
Yeah. That makes the CIA calling me up to go like head their telecommunications.
Right. Like
what?
Because I don't know, your wife worked there.
Sure.
That's it. That's the only
I know
connection.
Yeah.
Crazy, right? Rosemary is brought in as a replacement, and according to the files, she knows you better than anyone else.
Right.
As if that's a good reason, right?
Yeah,
and Rose may be in the service, but an intelligence analyst is no field officer. Not to worry, she has our technical staff at her disposal.
Then have one of them do it.
She's never been a part of a field mission. This is insane.
It is.
It is.
It is insane.
I have, and his final part of like dismissing this now, the Colonel says, I have my own reasons for selecting her for this mission, soldier.
You don't need to know.
You don't need to know.
Yeah.
So that final line, I think even if you are at first questioning this as being one of the stupid things in Metal Gear, that final line should dispel it because there is a reason. And the Colonel just doesn't want to say what it is.
I actually really, even in my first playthrough, I really liked Rosemary's interjections throughout the game, asking us about April 30th and how Raiden never knew. I liked it. Now, I made fun of it like crazy in the first Metal Gear game, Metal Gear Solid game. Now, in Metal Gear Solid 2, I just expect this, and I'm just enjoying it now.
Yeah.
Right? I'm done with being like, this is so stupid. Why are they hitting on each other during a mission? Why is she interrupting him when he's doing important work? There's something happening here that is difficult to pull off that Kojima somehow pulls off. And I am just here. I'm smiling now. I'm not upset. I mean, it's still, I wasn't expecting it to be this ridiculous, but I knew that some girl's going to show up and then she's going to be the girl and we're going to be flirting and that the game like has to have that. And so here's that element. And now I'm just like grinning, right?
Yeah.
I'm not like confused. I'm not upset. I'm just like, okay, this is wild. Let's do this. Yeah. This is going to be fun. Let's see where this goes. Let's see what's happening.
Yeah.
And then on April 30th, I actually have a little bit of a note here from Kojima himself. April 30th is just a random date. It's you'll find out as we go through the game exactly what April 30th means. At the moment, Raiden is like has no clue. But April 30th is a date that actually means a lot to Kojima himself. So April 30th is a day for Kojima that he forgot. He forgot a date that he had before he and his wife got married. And it was on April 30th. And Kojima said that him missing that date and not going with his wife on that day before they were married, when they were fiancés, he says it almost like sunk his life. Like it was such a devastating day for him that he was like, I will never forget that day no matter what.
Yeah.
And then he decides to throw April 30th into this game as an important date. He's kind of just taking things from his life and just kind of dropping him into this game.
This is not like a super related thing, but it's just something that came to my mind while I was playing. It was funny. Have you ever seen, so you know The Onion, obviously,
Yeah,
the parody news organization. So they have this one really, really funny headline. It's a picture of George Lucas, and it's like a quote from George Lucas. And it's like, people just don't understand that the events of Star Wars actually happened to me.
Yeah, I remember. This is an old one.
They actually happened to me, and people need to respect that.
I remember seeing that. The Onion used to be like gold standard comedy. So good.
You know, the idea of the way that people would, criticize the prequel trilogy and stuff. So it's a response from George Lucas to that. People don't understand that the events of Star Wars actually happened to me, and they need to respect that.
That's so funny.
So that I thought of that with Kojima here. It's like the events of Metal Gear Solid 2 actually happened to me.
Quit making fun of me. That's funny. Dude.
So this is a reflection of an actual thing that happened in his real relationship with his wife, and it's funny.
It's funny.
It's very relatable. I think almost anyone
absolutely.
who's been in a relationship has had something like this.
Yeah. You would never question this conversation. I wouldn't question most of the interactions that Raiden and Rosemary have. It's just, is this the time for that, right? But that's how Metal Gear Solid 1 was. That's how Final Fantasy 8 was. This is a common thing that I have grown to enjoy in media that I consume now, that I used to think, the rationality doesn't make sense. Where's the reason behind this, right? And I see it now as like a charming way to keep people smiling while they're playing the game and to kind of have like a side story going alongside the main story. Trust me, you can't pull this off. I don't know why Kojima can do this, but Kojima can pull this off, and he's doing it right now. He does it in this game. This game does it, in my opinion, better than the previous game with Snake and with the several Meryl and
I thought the same
girls.
thing. I liked the part of it is because they're in a relationship. There's a different dynamic to it.
Yeah, it's less I just met you. Hey, how about we go to the bar
it's
tonight?
Not that kind of like surface level flirtation. This is like an actual relationship that has some history and some depth, and they talk to each other. You feel that they have that.
Yeah.
And there's secrets that he has that he doesn't want to reveal about himself. Yeah. And she wants him to open up more. It's that level of a relationship where it's starting to get deeper and more serious.
They're past the honeymoon phase. Yeah. Although I suppose they're not married, but they're past the phase of honeymoon, which is the what can go wrong, we're lovers till the end, and now they're into the realistic, like, I have to live with this person, and you kind of bother me stage.
I liked that element of it.
That was really
and I felt like almost all those conversations, while I think rightfully, even some people, while I've been streaming it, are like, why are you bringing this up now? They said this isn't the time for it. Quite often that's how it feels when you have these uncomfortable conversations with your partner or significant other. Like, it's never the right time to have that conversation.
You're right.
Almost no matter what it is. There's always something else I could be doing that should be more important than this, because you just don't want to get into it. Like, it's just uncomfortable, right?
And then the reality is, unless you're saving the president of the United States, that there is nothing you can be doing that's more important than fixing your relationship to your spouse or to your significant other if they're in a very serious many years relationship.
Yeah.
But he is saving the president. So, okay.
Yeah, I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying that
I agree with you,
I didn't feel like taken out of the experience by it. One, because I feel like, at least I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for everyone. But in the relationships that I've had, it has almost felt like that. It's almost felt like they almost come at you at the most inopportune times. Yeah. It's like, are we really doing this right now?
Do we can
we please, like, not right now? But then that's
never,
almost,
if not now, when?
It's like, if not now, when? And also, it's just, that's what's consuming them at the moment.
Right.
And when it is, and when it's important to them. And that might not be a comfortable timing for you.
Well,
right.
And if you really care about this person, and if it's important to them, why isn't it important to you?
Yeah.
Then, right?
Right.
Well, because I'm saving the president. But this is a game. This is a game, and it's a fun game.
Yeah.
And when you are playing a fun game, it's okay to blur those boundaries between when it's acceptable to do that. and so well,
much fun. But here's the thing. There's a whole nother element to this that absolutely justifies all of this, and we will get to it later.
You're right.
But for where we're at now, and in the spirit of not trying to spoil endgame stuff at this moment, we'll avoid speaking on that directly.
So the complex itself is an interesting place. It is made of 6 struts.
Hexagons.
Yes, hexagonal struts. Now, there were some people who are a little more knowledgeable in the domain of,
chemistry,
DNA
oh,
and whatnot.
DNA.
Well, like just the cells and the way that this kind of stuff works. I was saying that I don't know how convenient it is that the molecular structures all ended up being hexagonal.
Oh,
during
the introduction sequence,
and there were some people saying, "Hey, look, actually, the molecules that make up something like DNA, although DNA I think is its own molecule, so I don't know the words to say here. I should have brought up the
terminology.
But basically, they're saying that the compounds that they're showing there that make up the molecules are actually pretty accurate. That often, especially as it relates to biological, molecules and cells and things like that. Stuff that's part of our DNA and whatnot. They tend to form in hexagonals or hexagons or pentagons, right? And so it's actually pretty apt that it's shown in this way. So that was kind of cool to know, to learn. So the hexagon means a lot of different things, I guess. So it can have some reference to biologics as well as virtual space, as well as snake scales. Like there's a lot of things going on with the hexagons, but there are 6 of them, and they are all arranged in a 6-sided shape thing, right? So you are going to, throughout the game, be tracing the shape of a hexagon on the small scale, large scale, fractals, right? You're going to go down, and it's possible that fractal goes all the way down. And that hexagon is still important, even like at the molecular level, and maybe even at a grand scale too. So it's like
cool.
It's fun, and I love it when a story can take a symbol like that and have it be relevant at multiple levels of analysis, multiple scales, right?
It's almost the coolest thing you can do.
It really is.
As if you've got a solid story and you can like keep polishing it, and you can keep like taking the symbolism further. If you can take a symbol that can go from the top or I should say macro scale down to the micro scale of all of your conflicts, that's pretty sweet when you can make that happen.
And if it's even possible for you to do that, that usually means that you're creating harmony in your world that you're making, right? You're saying that these things at the small scale have relevance at the large scale. I heard this saying many years ago, but I can't remember what his name is anymore, but there was a guy saying the parts mirror the whole.
Yes.
Right. So the parts of a process or of an object, they tend to mirror the whole of the object itself. Not just material wise, but shape wise and things like that. You can look at the atom and how it works, and then you can look at a solar system and be like, whoa, it's kind of like a similar thing going on here.
To a larger degree, I feel like this is kind of what I've landed on as what I consider like an excellent story, is when they essentially do what you're saying. When you are able to, again, from the macro to the micro, you're saying the same thing. The parts
and it's relevant
are
at
all
each level.
saying something about the whole, and the whole makes up the parts, and they're all saying the same thing. And that to me is writing with a purpose. That to me is designing with a purpose. That to me means you know where you're going, you know what you're saying, and you're saying it at every single place you can say it, from the visual design to the music to the writing, like the actual words on the paper, to the character design, image, to literally everything.
Even gameplay, if you can pull it off.
On every level, you are after one singular visual, one singular vision, one purpose, one theme, and you're saying something about that in every aspect of that whole.
What's so cool about it is that there is this tension in philosophy, just in general, of the one and the many, right? That everything is one, but everything is also an infinite, possibly, number of things, right? That you can constantly dissect things down to like the most microscopic scale. Yet somehow everything still seems to have this unifying aspect to it, right? And so if you can create this processes or systems or symbols within your world that are separate in a lot of ways, but then all contribute towards this grand unity at the same time that has the same kind of qualities to it, right? That you get to be an individual and part of a collective at the same time, you know?
Right.
That is the goal of like humanity, basically. Like we want to retain our individuality, yet also cohere as a group together where everyone's different. Well, that's hard to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the goal. That's like the dream. That's the ideal. There's a way that we can be both unified and diverse at the same time, right? And that's the goal. Let's try to find out how to do that. And when you tell a story that has all these diverse elements, but that also has this grand unity about it, there's just beauty there.
Yeah,
there's
there is.
beauty that can't be conveyed any other way.
Yeah.
And that does speak to what we experience in the universe, that
Yeah.
there is a unity to the universe, but also an infinitely divisible multiplicity as well.
Yeah.
That's difficult to understand which one is paramount. And it's like, well, they are in harmony with each other.
Yeah.
The coolest thing ever. So
Yeah.
I love that they did that. And we're going to, throughout this show, throughout this podcast series, we're going to keep explaining all of the points to which Kojima is using his mimetic theory
Yeah.
in this game, and it's wild. It's almost every scene that they are referencing memes or ideals or something.
It's why I think this story is so good, and why even maybe unconsciously, or at least maybe I hadn't really narrowed onto it yet, just in my initial playthrough, just getting through the game, just seeing what it's about. Like, it's resonating, it's working on all of these levels, and I'm not necessarily noticing even why.
I know,
but
that's how well it's done.
This kind of thing would be my explanation for it.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not noticing it yet, it's there, and it's all working towards that one goal or that one purpose.
Even when Rosemary says, "Do you remember April 30th?" Right?
Yeah.
First off, it's like, okay, I have this relationship with this person. We are very close. You know, we live together. We share our life together. But do you share the memes with each other? Are you unified in a mimetic sense?
Yeah.
And when she says, "Do you remember this thing that's important to me that you should know?" and he doesn't remember it, it's showing a little bit of a break on the mimetic end, right? It's like, okay, biologically speaking, yes, we are very close, like have a relationship. And relationships are often mimetic as well. There's a big mimetic aspect to that as well. But it's not enough that we're just close. Do you remember, when people talk about memory and remembering things, that is a direct reference to memes, and that's where the meme comes from. It's memory.
Yeah.
And Raiden is saying, I don't remember. And that's significant. That's significant.
Yeah.
And this scene kind of is pointing to that. And even though it's like, oh, why is she bringing this up here? Look, this scene is pointing towards something bigger, and it does have to do with memory.
Yeah.
And just remember that.
Yeah. I mean, this is the kind of thing that creates something like family traditions. Remembering
exactly.
a moment where we were bonded, and sort of commemorating that with a tradition.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even remember what it was.
Yes, exactly.
That's hurtful.
The mimetic magic doesn't work when these things aren't remembered.
Yeah.
They need to be remembered. They need to be passed on. And yeah, it's hurtful. It damages the relationship. You may be a compatible match biologically speaking, but it's like if the memes don't match, the relationship won't last.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
You gotta do your part, man. Even if you're saving the president, you gotta remember well, I don't want to say the word. You've got to remember the dates. You've got to remember the memes. You can't let go of the memes, even when you're on the most important mission that you can ever be on, which is to save the president or the king or whoever it is.
Right.
The memes are it's the unseen around you, you know? Like, don't lose sight of those. And we're gonna deal with that directly with Fatman.
I put here, I've got quotations, so dialogue. The terrorists call themselves the Sons of Liberty. Their leader is Solid Snake.
Yeah.
But it can't be the Solid Snake. He died 2 years ago on that tanker after he blew it sky high.
Yeah.
Remember how I brought up the whole HAL conversation last time?
Yeah.
And Snake asked him, "Are you sure about this intelligence?"
Sure about and he's like, "Maybe I made a mistake." Yeah.
This is now the second time Raiden is questioning the Colonel's intelligence. The first one was, "Hey, there was a freaking hole cut in the thing. That's not possible." Now he says, "It can't be the Solid Snake. He died 2 years ago on that tanker after Blue Sky High. Could he have survived? Not a chance.
Not a chance. Meaning
impossible.
Impossible.
No,
yes. Yeah,
absolutely not. I am 100% certain about my intelligence."
And
this is a running thing.
It
I know I'm harping on it a little too much, but I really think it's important that you understand this to understand what I'm going to make a point about at the very end. Okay. The SEAL team's mission fails pretty quickly. So they go in, try to rescue the president. That doesn't work out for them. I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Well, this is your second time through, so it's not quite the same, but maybe first time through.
If I can remember
your feelings about a literal blood-sucking vampire being an enemy in the game.
Now, Metal Gear Solid 1 was wild, but it wasn't quite that wild. This is a little bit above the first Metal Gear, I think. I thought it was crazy. I didn't understand what was going on. But once again, I'm here for it. I didn't really like it at first. Vamp seems to be a little too powerful. You know, some people's critiques of like Superman and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's like Vamp could do things that for some reason he just doesn't do. He can kill people that he chooses not to kill, and I don't know exactly why yet. So I'm confused as somebody who's that powerful. Right. It makes sense that he was given some of the powerful abilities of a different character who got cut later in the game, and they gave them to Vamp because it's like, okay, that makes sense because he's like double powerful. He's a little too powerful. It's a little extra, if that makes sense. So he shows up, he basically kills everybody, and then when he stabs that dude and the blood is just like, that was so
this even had
violent.
Echoes to me of like Final Fantasy VII's blood through the hallway in the Shinra building scene. It has that. I mean, it's
there's
the
several
same
moments.
idea. There's blood splattered all over the walls. It's blood in this game, just like shooting everywhere. It's pretty intense.
Yeah,
there's a lot of blood. There's a freaking lot of blood in this scene.
Yeah, it's freaking wild. Like possibly more than any other scene here. But it's nuts. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And then of course we show up, and he is about to kill Raiden easily, right? Raiden is so unprepared for this, right? Despite having done mission 50 times or whatever he did. And then somebody shows up. A lieutenant, what do they call him?
Let's get the
is he a
dialogue
lieutenant
here for the it's important to note he's an
part of SEAL
officer of the SEALs.
Yes,
which
a Navy.
We'll get to what Peter Stillman has to say about that a little later. So yes, he's an officer of the SEALs. Let's just put it that way for now.
His name is Iroquois Plissken.
But okay.
Love it. I love it.
I don't know how I will think about this afterwards, about whether we use spoiler tags here or not.
I don't think we do.
Absolutely 0 point in doing so.
Everyone in the world knows who this is.
Everybody knows who this is.
They didn't even make a small attempt.
Not even the slightest
voice.
Attempt to actually mask this.
Yeah, it's very
unless you really believed Kojima is playing 12D chess and is trying to make me think that this is Snake, but it's not.
Yeah.
There's no way you didn't know that. There's no way. The first thing he says is, and it's subtitled, so my name is Plissken.
That's so good.
He almost says it outright.
And it's, my name is Iroquois Plissken. I suck at Snake's voice, but it's so obviously his voice. Unbelievably David Hayter.
You just played this character not that long ago.
5 minutes ago.
You saw his face. Yeah. You heard his voice multiple times. It is the same face and the same voice. And he almost called himself Snake, but then stopped himself to say Iroquois Plissken. And if that's not enough, we already talked about this in Metal Gear Solid 1. The character was inspired in the first place by SD Bob Snake Plissken. In the fictional character who served as the protagonist for the films Escape from New York and Escape from LA.
Yep.
That guy's name is
Plissken.
Snake Plissken.
Yeah.
Is anybody actually fooled by this? If anyone comes at me and says, you spoiled it, I really, really, really struggle to believe you. There's no way you didn't know it. Because I think you're supposed to know it.
I think you're supposed to know.
I think the intention here is you're supposed to know Snake is lying to me. He doesn't want me to know he's involved. He's trying to stay undercover or whatever.
I think that's a safe read.
That's what you're supposed to think. There's no way that you're surprised by this later. There's just no way. I'm sorry. It's not a freaking spoiler. you're crazy if you try to accuse me of spoiling the game.
Not just that, he's alone. He is really talented at what he's doing. He knows Vamp. He knows what's going on here.
Yeah.
He is Solid Snake is who he is.
He is who he is.
And even Raiden kind of, I don't know, he doesn't suspect it. He is suspicious of Plissken.
Oh, and,
he's
and
like,
it goes
I don't know
further.
that you
It goes further.
are who you say you are.
Because he claims to have gotten onto the shell via fast rope descent from a Navy chopper.
Right.
Yet, one of those little tiny cockroaches crawls out from underneath him.
Right.
And Raiden takes note of it right away.
I remember
because
that.
as he came in from the underwater, there were those bugs were all over the place in that initial place where he entered. And the cut in the fence. Someone else got in through this way. Those are the same roaches from the room where I entered. They just came out of his like pocket or whatever. He was there.
Yeah.
Because he's not telling me the truth.
And as soon as Raiden tries to make any noise about this, the Colonel is very quickly like, no. Just do your job. Do the mission, soldier. He can't really, Snake is dead, right? Oh, but I still think Snake's alive in my heart. Snake's dead, kid. Shut up. Like Raiden has this, even though the press around that tanker incident 2 years ago was so widespread, Raiden still seems to have this admiration for Snake. And it's probably because he played as Snake in the VR missions for years and years and years. He's got this connection with Snake that,
he's a legendary mercenary.
Don't have. Yeah.
He's like he's the elite of the elite.
Yeah. Oh, and we also didn't mention this. Raiden was called Snake when he first.
Yes.
At the very beginning.
His original code name was Snake. They changed it to Raiden partway through.
He's Jack, codenamed Snake, codenamed Raiden.
Raiden.
Right. So he's like several code names deep, which is interesting if you're going to talk about identity and what it means to, once again, identity is mimetic. It is a mimetic thing. And he's multiple layers deep in the meme of name, right?
Yes.
And because they didn't have to start out calling him Snake at the beginning.
No.
I think they did it for the player, though. I think they were like, all right, Snake, get into this mission. And you think you're still playing as Snake, and then you're not. And it turns out this dude's real name is Jack. So it's like, okay, weird, but I kind of get why. Maybe I'll talk a little bit later about the abrupt change of playing as Raiden versus Snake, because it really kind of grows later on. At this point in the game, I thought especially after seeing Snake, I was like, oh, we're going to get to play as Snake again soon. Okay, good. Glad this Raiden dude's done. Now we've met Snake. Now the perspective is going to shift, and now we're going to finish the game as Snake. This Raiden thing was just a little fun distraction right here in the middle of the game.
Right.
It's not. And so Raiden is your character.
Yes.
And you are not playing as Snake, but I thought we were, which is also probably why I didn't mind playing as Raiden so much, because Snake was there, and I thought at any moment we're going to be playing as Snake. And the end of the game is so satisfactory that I didn't actually mind that it never happened. I didn't mind it.
I want to reemphasize.
And the game isn't that long either.
I really like Raiden as a character.
I do too.
I think he's awesome.
Yeah.
And
he's more well-rounded than Snake in a lot of ways.
I think so too. Yeah. And we'll talk about that more, but like this just absolutely, not only did it not bother me, I'm extremely pleased with the choice.
Yeah, me too.
To not be Snake in this game, you're Raiden. I think it's an awesome choice.
But you are supposed to feel some friction about the situation right here. You are supposed to feel a little bit like confused. Yeah. You're supposed to wonder, why am I Raiden and not Snake?
100%.
One of the great things that Raiden as Snake is then talking to him like, hey, what are you doing here, man? Like, you are not prepared for this mission at all. And Raiden's like, what are you talking about? I'm so good at I've beaten the video game like 5 times. You know what's funny? I didn't actually know about the VR thing until you mentioned it, that was actually a VR game.
Yes. This is directly referenced in the scene. You see the missions right there in the flashbacks.
When Snake says, oh, great. War is a video game. What better way to raise the ultimate soldier? He is mocking you, the player.
Yes.
And this is something I don't know what to do with yet. Only on my second playthrough have I began to pick up on these subtle intonations from, I believe, Kojima, that I don't think he respects us, the video game players, that much. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. I'm just saying I'm slowly picking up on this Kojima guy doesn't seem to like me very much.
If it's not that he doesn't like you, he certainly doesn't care what you think.
Well, fair enough. Yeah. I think that's probably absolutely true. He doesn't care what I think, which is why I can just be perfectly honest and lay it out flat. I don't know. He is calling out, like, just this line right here. War as a video game, what better way to raise the ultimate soldier? You're sitting here playing a video game, as Snake is saying that, and Snake is rolling his eyes at the concept of playing a game and thinking that you're, like, doing something.
Yeah.
Right? Or that, like, war. Like, that this war is training you for anything real.
A game in the first place.
It shouldn't be.
There's a pacifist mindset in it of, like,
I think so,
why, and we've talked about this a lot with other games like Nier, the way that they criticize games being as violent as they are. Well, Spec Ops is true as well.
Yeah.
It's true in Spec Ops, it's true in Nier. But we've seen this throughout a lot of games we've covered, and I think this is leaning into that, not as heavily as those did, but there's a hint of it, I think, in what Snake is saying there.
Yeah.
War is a video game.
Like,
you're
really?
literally playing.
But you're doing it.
Yes.
You're doing it. And so that's where Kojima, who does seem to have some of these pacifist leanings, yet he makes
violent
these games where people's blood is just spurting all over the walls and a vampire's just drinking it up. And you're, as the protagonist, you are just killing 1,000 people by the time all is said and done. Now, this game may be less because you're tranking people a lot.
Yeah,
but
you can
are
do
killing lots of people in this game.
Pacifist runs. I don't know if they're technically called that, but the idea where you don't kill anybody.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think you can do that in this
game. Even against the bosses, you can tranquilize them.
Okay.
Because they have the 2 health bars. They have, like, their health, and they have like their trank health.
That's right.
So I think you can play the whole game without killing anybody.
Okay, that makes sense. He makes games where you kill lots of people, and I think his only consolation is that he gets to make fun of you while he does it.
Yes.
I think that's where he's like, yeah, but maybe we shouldn't linger on this for too long.
Sure.
Kojima is doing different things now. But somebody tweeted at us a couple days ago. Did you see this?
I did not.
Kojima was it New Year's or Christmas? He shared an image on his Twitter account.
I think maybe I did see this, and it was
of a snake.
It's the logo of his Kojima Productions. It's that character in, like, the suit or, like, the mask or whatever,
stabbing a snake,
and there's, like, snakes on the staff or whatever, and it's some cryptic, like, clue as to,
I don't know what it means. I don't know.
It could mean nothing. It could mean everything. You never know.
But it's fascinating that it seems like Kojima is not a fan of the Metal Gear Solid games. I really get that impression.
I would not be surprised if that's true. But since
the way he
even talked about wanting to leave a bunch of time, but
Yeah.
certainly not a fan of his bosses at Konami and the way that relationship soured at the end.
We'll talk about that maybe when we do future games. But yeah, that was a big deal when it happened, and that was wild. It was like 8 years ago. But anyways, I'm getting these subtle hints throughout the game of Kojima pointing the finger at us in a more direct way than I even really picked up the first time.
Sure.
I'm like, oh wait, no, he's not just pointing the game at those people. He's pointing it at me, like, pretty critically right now. That's fascinating, and that's something I was kind of shocked to pick up on.
There's one thing I wanted to mention before we move on from this. Well, before we move into more of the simulation of VR stuff, and that was in regards to Vamp. So Vamp being as powerful as he is. We had someone post the meme here, the Nanomachine Sun meme from Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, the game that follows Raiden, the cyborg. And it's like the cutting.
Yes,
so the final boss in that is infused with nanomachines, as is almost everybody in this game.
Okay.
And nanomachines are basically magic in this universe. They can do anything.
Okay. All right.
So anytime you have a character who is exceptionally powerful, it's safe to assume it's because of nanomachines.
Okay.
Or at least in some form or another. And unless we're talking about back to Metal Gear Solid 3 times. I don't know if they had nanomachines in the 1960s and 70s or whenever that game takes place.
I don't think so, but who knows, man? Who knows?
In this alternate universe, who knows?
Yeah.
But anyway, nanomachines, you can be certain in the present timeline, have probably something to do with their magical powers that he certainly has.
Okay.
So, wanted to mention that.
We'll get an answer to that later, I guess.
Just don't question nanomachines. Nanomachines just do crazy stuff in this game.
Okay.
All right. So Plissken asks if Raiden is with FOXHOUND. And he says he's not supposed to, he doesn't say that. He's not supposed to, by him, I mean Raiden, sorry. Raiden is not supposed to let anybody know he is there. He is it was a 100% covert op. Yeah. Do not let anyone know FOXHOUND is involved in this whatsoever. Right. And he basically just tells him outright, yes, I'm with FOXHOUND. Plissken tells him that FOXHOUND was disbanded. Right. Now, it's very easy, again, to just kind of like, this dialogue is all so important. It's all really pointing towards a very, very, very key theme. And that's why I love this game so much. None of this is just like dialogue for the purpose of conversation.
Yeah, it's not
I thought FOXHOUND was disbanded. Well, I guess it's not because you're with FOXHOUND. No, it's all purposeful. So just keep that in mind. Plissken, Snake, is telling Raiden, FOXHOUND, the group you're with, is disbanded. Don't you know? Okay, just wanted to say that. Plissken asks him whether he has, he's with Delta Force or some other, special elite unit or whatever. Yeah. And that's when Raiden reveals that he's part of the Army's Force 21 trials. Force 21, that's about tactical IT deployment, right? Any field experience? No, not really. So this is your first. I've had extensive training, the kind that's indistinguishable from the real thing.
Yeah.
Like what? Sneaking Mission 60?
I love that, dude.
I laughed out loud.
Me too, dude.
I busted up laughing.
Once again, though.
It's not even just the line, it's the way he says it. There's such like a juvenile, whiny tone to it.
I've had extensive training, the kind that's indistinguishable from the real thing. Like what? Sneaking Mission 60?
That is exactly like a little kid would say to like, nuh-uh, I'm legit.
This is one of the things where this is why I bring up Snake is making fun of people who take video games seriously.
Yes.
Snake is making fun of you. Yes. If you take video games seriously and you're I played Sneak Mission 60 as in a serious manner, he's making fun of you.
Yeah.
And that's pretty funny. And then Snake is just like, oh my gosh, they're sending video game people out to play to actually go do real things in the real world.
Yeah.
What does this world come to, you know?
So again, I'll just read that again. I've had the kind of extensive training that's indistinguishable from the real thing.
Indistinguishable. That's a word.
Indistinguishable.
That is probably not true, but that the assumption is we've accounted for all of the possibilities in this mission. And just when he says it, you know that's not true. As soon as he says it, you're like, dude, that's not possible. There's no way that's true, that it's indistinct. No, that's not possible.
So like what? Sneaking Mission 60, Weapons 80, it just goes on. It's so good. It's so freaking funny. And then he interrupts him, VR, huh? But realistic in every way.
In every way. Yeah.
A virtual grunt of the digital age. That's just great. It's far more effective than live exercises. You don't get injured in VR, do you?
No.
There's pain sensation in VR, even a sense of reality and urgency. The only difference is that it isn't actually happening. That's the way that they want you to think, to remove you from the fear that goes with battle situations. War as a video game, what better way to raise the ultimate soldier? So you're saying the VR is some kind of mind control?
Kojima is talking to you.
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
Let's go back up real quick to the line that I skipped earlier. There's a crucial tactical detail. That case, Shadow Moses he's referring to, taught us. It was the power of the operative's will to survive.
That's right.
I was trained to fight. My personal feelings have no place in this mission. We've learned that it doesn't work that way.
Which is why Rosemary's here.
Yeah. And on the field, you need all the help you can get. Yep. So there's...
Because he's saying, oh, I can separate my emotions from my physical state.
Right.
And Colonel's like, that's not possible. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you think you can do that. You can't, my friend.
And that's what Snake is saying here.
Yeah.
You don't get injured in VR. He's questioning the validity of the VR exercises, right? But it has a real sense of urgency, and the only difference is it's not happening. That's what's the way they want you to think, to remove you from the fear. Right. My feelings should have no place in this. To remove you from the fear that goes with battle situations. War is a video game. So What they learned from Snake in Shadow Moses was that the operatives, the power of his will to survive, his emotions, not just the training, not just the discipline, not just all the what goes into making a soldier. That's not just that. There's also this other element, this unattainable, intangible thing that he has.
Yeah.
That's what you need. And they're telling Raiden this. So again, I'm not going to like fully get into this yet, but this is all set up, guys. It's all set up. It's all important. So then Plissken goes into telling him about Dead Cell, essentially the terrorists who are here overtaking this this big shell, right? And they have the president captive. So Vamp is one of them. There are 4 members of Dead Cell here.
Yeah.
It's a special forces unit created by ex-president George Sears. So George Sears is one of them.
Yep.
The name was originally intended to reflect its anti-terrorist functions. The unit would launch unannounced assaults on government complexes for the ultimate terrorism simulation. They were needed to show VR troopers like you how to deal with the real thing. But around the time their original leader died in prison, the unit began to unravel. They were always close to the edge, but they became more and more extreme. Began to go after U.S. allies, even civilians. We estimate that no fewer than 100 people died as a result of accidents the Dead Cell arranged on their own. They were out of control, and it all came to a head 6 months ago. Raiden asks what happened. Snake says, Plissken says, the unit was devastated. There are only 3 left now, and you just saw one of them. So, also keep a mental track of the word simulation and how often it comes up.
Yes.
Even outside of the maybe like strict context of VR training. Dead Cell was a group whose job was to go around and simulate terrorist attacks, unannounced tests, so that elite U.S. forces could like practice responding to them.
Right.
So that's who Dead Cell is. Vamp is a member of that. We get introduced to Fortune here in a minute. She's another one.
Yeah.
You have George Sears and then Fatman, who is the first boss that we fight here towards the end, is where we're working up to. And he's the one who set up all the bombs that we have to go disarming. That's basically the next major section. But there's a quick introduction to Fortune, but there's a funny thing that happens in between that. First of all, Plissken confirms the official story that Snake is dead and was responsible for the tanker incident.
Right.
Also, one of the SEALs ends up coming on Plissken's radio.
Yeah.
Like, hey, oh my gosh, like respond. Like and he's not responding. He's not picking up the radio, and he's an officer.
Right.
He's supposed to be like leading this operation.
Yeah.
So he's not responding. And Raiden looks at him like, aren't you going to respond to that? And Snake gives I said again, Plissken
it's fine.
gives a very like long look at him like, crap, what do I do? And then starts to slowly reach for it to buy himself time. And then the guy gets shot before he has a chance to answer the radio. It's good, man. It's good the way that this is all set up.
Yeah, it's very good. There's also something strange happens to Snake in this scene too, where his mind, all of a sudden he kind of sits down and he's got this like headache where it's like, he can't like think straight and he just kind of needs a minute. We don't know exactly what's going on there, but he has headaches now for some reason.
Right.
And it affects his ability to do stuff, right? That's why we don't just go with him right away.
Okay, so Plissken also notices that the kid is rigged with nanomachines. He like takes note of that. Oh, he's rigged with because Campbell's talking to him. Yeah. So we should probably mention this too. This has definitely changed from how the codec worked in the first game.
Yeah, it's nanomachine based now.
It's like nanomachine telepathy.
Yeah, Ames kind of talks about it a bit.
I'm not sure why they did this. It's a little bit silly to me. But essentially, like when you go into the codec and you're communicating, you're basically like mind to mind
thinking to them.
They're not speaking.
Yeah.
In the first game, this was sort of placed into the small bones of the ear so that Snake was the only one who could hear Campbell or the others talking to him, but he was speaking. So like he would have had to have been quiet or like not make a lot of noise when he responded, but he wasn't just thinking his dialogue over to the other side. In this game, that is how it works.
Yeah.
This is all nanomachines.
Yeah.
So nanomachine magic makes it possible for anyone who has the codec to like think to each other and for no one to be able to like interrupt unless they have the frequency interrupt or intercept, I should say, their communication. It's completely silent and secret communication. So that is how the codec works in this game. Raiden is sort of like turned and is like communicating with Campbell, with the colonel, and Snake notices that and says he's rigged with nanomachines, and then gives you his frequency and says, hey, communicate with me over this if you need to. I say all that because did you call him right back after that?
Well,
this is something not a lot of people do because you don't think to do it.
Okay.
You should always in Metal Gear games spam the codec because you get all kinds of additional dialogue you wouldn't get otherwise.
Oh, very good.
So if he's like, oh, I just need to rest for a minute, give me a second to catch my breath.
He pulls out a cigarette.
And he gives you the cigarettes, and it might come in handy taking it. He's like, I don't smoke.
I don't smoke. He's like, hey, trust me.
just take it anyways. So if you turn around right after that conversation's over and you call Plissken, he's snoring and sleeping.
Really? That's funny, dude.
And like you can call multiple times. Oh, he's still sleeping. Like
I didn't know that.
It's really funny.
Funny.
And I think that Kojima is so good in these games at injecting a perfect moment of humor like that right after a heavy violent scene or a really heavy exposition scene with lots of information and lots of like crazy stuff that happens. And you're reeling a little bit, maybe trying to keep track of it all. And then like something perfectly timed piece of silly humor will come up like that just to lift that tension a little bit. Okay, we're having fun playing the game. Let's, continue forward.
That's funny. That's cool. I did notice a few of them of things like that.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't know about that.
Yeah,
one.
It's really funny. He just wants to sleep. He just wants to take a nap for a second.
Like every now and then when you go to like the lockers and stuff, you'll open a door and there'll be like a poster of a girl in a bikini or something.
Yeah.
Like I've seen that a few times. There's somebody who always has diarrhea on the ship, like one of the bad guys, and anyways, there's funny stuff with that too. But yeah, there's always these little things that you can like accidentally stumble upon as you're playing the game.
It's
he's
really
very
funny.
good at that.
There's lots of stuff like that. There's one coming up here that I really like too, but we got to get through.
Yeah. Real quick, there's the
Fortune,
one here. I don't know. This is more from Snake. I believe this is where my note is here, but basically Raiden says that Snake Solid was a legend. And this is where Snake says legends are bad news.
Yes, you're right.
Legends
This
are bad
important.
news.
This is important.
Yeah, there's not a lot of difference usually between a hero and a madman, is what he says, right?
Very important.
Some truth to that statement.
Very
for
important.
Sure.
Very important for the themes of this game.
Many such cases.
So Raiden takes note of how this all seems like a bad dream. None of it seems real. Dead Cell, Rose being part of the mission, etc. Like this can't be happening. This is too crazy. Just keep note of that. Raiden proceeds to strut C and finds Peter Stillman. He briefs Plissken and Raiden on the situation with Fatman having planted the C4 on all the struts of Big Shell to destroy it. And Plissken and Raiden will have to disarm all the C4 before they can proceed with the mission. No, I'm not going to say that. I'll wait for later to say that. However, one of the funny things, so one of the C4 in the strut where you find Peter Stillman is inside of the women's restroom.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if you have gone into the women's restroom before meeting Stillman and getting this objective to go take out all C4, you call him when you're trying to like get hints about what to do, and he'll say, they'll give you these, again, this is a gamey thing.
Right.
In real life, in a situation like this, the guy would just try to tell you straight up the information you need to know to complete the mission.
You're trying to say
you might want to look in the women's restroom if you haven't yet. They would have said that.
Yes.
Here, they're giving hints, vague hints, because the player needs to piece it out
Right.
because that's part of the fun of the game is figuring it out for yourself. So they give you hints. So he tries to give you a hint. It's a place that no guy has been into before, right? Like to try to give you the hint that it's the women's restroom.
Yeah.
But if you've been in there before, he'll say, oh, looks like you've already been in there before, huh? And he like,
like gives you a wink or something.
He like, you know, kind of like mocks you a little bit there.
Oh, that's pretty
So that's
funny.
another example of that sort of thing. But what you find out is that Fatman is essentially putting all of these C4 in like the most, what's the word for it?
Conspicuous?
Like conspicuous, but like it's in a position where it won't do the damage it needs to do to destroy it. It's not on like a weak spot.
Yeah, a hinge
the
point
strut.
or a weak spot. Yeah,
It's in these places where it's like that won't actually be effective.
right.
Ineffective
You'll
places.
kill someone if they're near it, I guess, but you're not damaging the building.
And Plissken even calls in and says, I found one on the back of one of the soldiers. It was like on his back, like planted on him, like walking around.
You'd love to see Snake disarm that because they get this like spray, this like freeze
it's
the
like it's like a spray that freezes the little, I don't know, the thing that's counting down on it or whatever.
Yeah, the timer
to stop the timer.
That line is kind of important though. The fact that it was on a soldier because, well, Fatman is interesting and puts bombs in interesting places. And knowing that he would even put a bomb on a person later on when you fight Fatman at the end of that fight, that's a little bit of a hint as to where his final bomb might be.
Right, exactly. Yes.
So that's pretty good. I actually like
it's clever. It's clever in multiple ways, not only in reinforcing this idea. Fatman is purposefully not putting these in effective spots.
And he could put one on a soldier where the soldier wouldn't notice. And no one around him would notice either.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Good thing to note.
So I took...
Well, I've got one. So before we meet Peter Stillman...
Yeah, we got to talk about Fortune.
We just see Fortune. There's not much there.
Right.
You just see her.
She can't be hit by bullets.
Yes, that was the most interesting scene, and the music choice was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's got like that saxophone.
At first, I'm like, you just hear... Yeah, it's like a jazzy music. But you just hear just thousands of gunshots ringing out, and it's just like... There's no way that they're all missing, right? And I remember the moment it hit me, like, oh, this isn't supposed to be happening. Like Kojima didn't write a scenario where they're just finger on the trigger for like a minute straight and nothing's hitting and just reload. Like it doesn't, they have a drum. They have like 1,000 bullet drum and just like gonna melt the barrel of your gun there. You're shooting so many bullets and nothing is hitting her. And then I noticed when you hear the sound of the like, as the bullets are like missing her and that saxophone and she just kind of like steps forward and walks into the open.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, I get what's happening. There's some like field around her.
Yes.
They aren't able to hit her.
Yes.
I thought that was actually really cool. At first, I was like, this is so silly. This is unbelievable. I cannot buy this. And then it turned from that to being like, oh, fascinating. And then like kind of the explanation for it is also fascinating. I think we even mentioned it in episode 1, but it's like it's almost like a Doctor Strange kind of. It's almost like we are in the universe where none of the things hit her, right? It's just if something's, we talked about this a little bit in Alan Wake as well. It's like, this is the universe where the gun didn't go off when the trigger got pulled or something like that, you know?
Yes.
I think that happens with a grenade. They throw a grenade and it lands right at her feet and it's a dud.
So yeah, we got to put this in because the delivery on that line is hilarious.
Yeah,
like the shoulders are fighting and they're shooting, and then they launch the grenade and it just kind of falls. And the guy's delivery on it is so funny. It's just a dud,
a dud,
a dud. Nice.
It's just really funny the way he says it. But yeah, so like nothing can hit her.
Nothing
now,
can.
The irony behind this character, they call her Fortune. That's her nickname because on the battlefield, she can't be killed.
Sounds like a great thing, right?
But in life, she has lost everything important to her. Family, like lovers, like all kinds of things, right? So she has been unlucky in every respect in life. Yeah. But she is always lucky on the battlefield. So there's kind of this like duality to that character. And it's gotten to the point where she's suffering so much. She just wants someone to kill her.
She just
doesn't want to be alive anymore, but she can't die.
It won't work.
So
nothing
when
works.
when you encounter her a little bit later, she's like asking you, like, will you be the one?
Yeah.
Like, kill me, please.
Free me from this mortal coil.
Right.
What's fascinating about it is that you look at everything else in her life that she's lost, right? These things all have mimetic importance, but not genetic importance. The only thing that's important genetically is the selfish gene, right? It's you're alive. That's what the genes care about. If you're alive, fine, everything's great, right? So if on a genetic level, if on the gene level, she's still alive, yet on the meme level, the relationship level, the everything else that she has in life that's important to her, if on that level she has nothing, she doesn't want to live, right?
Yes.
It's not enough. The genes are not enough. That's
are
more
or
less what it's saying.
Yes.
That yes, your genes will go on, I suppose, to the next day, I guess. I don't know when she's programmed. Sorry, why am I even saying that? I don't know when I'm talking about like the grand design of the universe. Okay, when she's her fate. I don't know when she's fated to die.
Which was
theoretically
the theme of the first game. Genes,
yes.
It's written in your fate. Your genes dictate everything, right?
And just like with Fox die or whatever, it's like, okay, yeah, at any point you could go, right? And so her genes are succeeding so greatly, but she is miserable and she's suffering. And so that's just kind of a reinforcement for this following, this next stage, right? Well, if it's not just the genes, what is it? Okay, what about the memes? What if you lose all the memes but keep the genes? That doesn't cut it. So this scene, once again, has that importance tied to it as well. Yeah. But she kind of shows up, and then is it the president? It's the president, right?
The president's there on the floor in front of her, like knocked out.
This is where they get the football.
And Vamp comes, picks him up, and walks away. Yeah.
And then the SEAL Team 6 is like, she basically kills them all. And then I think she laments that a lot of the seagulls she killed as well.
We should probably explain
she
for
calls
those who
them
don't know what football is in this context.
Oh, I've got a funny story about
know
football.
What that is.
The nuclear football.
Briefcase,
so it's a briefcase that is handcuffed to a close, the closest, I don't even know who it is. You're not supposed to know who it is, right? There's a person who follows around the president who's designated by the military to be the specific nuclear code handler, right?
Yeah.
And if ever nuclear bombs need to be fired, the president has to approve it, right? And so if that happens while he's on vacation, you've got to have a way for him to approve it on a secure system that nobody else can imitate and mimic, because this is like high life and death stakes, right? So because of that, there is someone who is always within, I don't know the number, 100 yards. There's always somebody within a very close proximity of the president who is carrying a suitcase that is literally handcuffed to his wrist, and he has his own security detail, or she, I don't know. You never see this person because they purposefully, they're probably, I'm sure paparazzi, I'm sure people have gotten photos of the person holding the nuclear football. That's probably why we even know that it exists. But you're not supposed to really know who it is, because this person could be threatened, or their family could be threatened, or it's all top secret. But it's the briefcase that has, I want to say, nuclear codes. I don't know that that's accurate. I don't know that it's a code necessarily, but it's the way that the president can authorize a nuclear strike if he needs to. And it's technically on this secure briefcase. And the way it works in this game, we'll probably get into it next time because they go into how it works. But that's what it is. It's called the football is what they've called it. I don't know exactly why. And in the early years, there was a code associated with firing nukes. And do you want to guess what the code was? And it was this code. There was 50 nuclear warheads that were all coded to the exact same code, 000000000. And it was that code. Now, here's the thing. Even if you have that code, you still can't fire the nukes. The football, it's actually a separate thing, and that's sort of like a binary code kind of thing. But it's really funny that for 20 years, they never changed it for this specific set of nukes. And it was 0000000. And as soon as I got figured out, they changed it really quick. But they just left it the same because there's more steps than just if you have the code, you get to fire nukes. There's more steps than that. So it didn't matter. No one else could put in those codes except for the president. So they just made it something easy for the president to remember. It's something like that. Now, people who know science and all that stuff, tell me, is there a more reasonable explanation why the code was 0000000? I remember reading this a long time ago, but it's pretty funny. So the football, it's not foolproof. It's not foolproof, but there are multiple fail safes, so which is good news. Although you can look into close calls we've had with almost launching nukes in the
Cold War era.
There are a lot of them, and it's pretty freaky to realize how close we've come. And every single time that people have literally thought nukes are falling on us, we have 2 minutes to respond, the people in charge of firing a counterstrike have chosen not to do it. So there's some faith in humanity stuff there that's like,
it's almost like the selfish
cool.
gene is a lot stronger than people realize.
Something needs to survive.
As fearful as freaky as it is to think about how realistic, I guess, the threat of nuclear war is, it's also counterpoint. Selfish gene exists.
Yeah, and
it's pretty freaking. It's gonna win. It's pretty freaking persuasive.
It's pretty powerful.
Too.
It doesn't want to die,
and people kind of don't want to start a nuclear war.
There's a guy. There is a man who I think he might be dead now, but he lives in Russia, and the whole world still exists because of him. He chose not to counterstrike. Turned out the radar picked up a flock of birds. It wasn't a U.S. missile, but everyone told him that it was, and he was the final line of push the button, and he chose not to do it, and they waited, and nothing happened, and everything was fine, and he didn't, he hardly even knows who he is. He's just like a poor dude living in Russia now. He's like an old man. He might be dead now. But that man saved the world, and nobody knows who he is, and he did not get rewarded in Russia for
saving the world, having a strong selfish gene.
No, he did not. But he saved the world, and there are many such cases.
Yeah.
There's at least 7 cases where nukes almost got fired. 4 of them very serious, and 1 or 2 of them are just like, wow, I can't believe we got out of that one. Yeah. That's freaking wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and Fortune, the design of Fortune, this is a blonde Michael Jackson. That is a woman. They clearly designed Fortune after Michael Jackson. The Captain Neo too, with the hair coming down the front and kind of the, pulled back. But blonde hair and totally a woman. And it fits. It's still Michael Jackson. I just think it's funny. I think it's wonderful.
I don't know if we've missed anything with Fortune other than, the president is taken and the nuclear football with him. So they've got it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's when Raiden takes note of how this all seems like a bad dream and this is crazy.
Yeah.
Now back to Fatman again.
Yeah, Peter Stillman and Fatman.
So Fatman's design was inspired by a trip the team took to New York City.
Yeah.
During the development of the game. So I took a quote here from.
Did they see a guy
article.
like that?
No, the team visited landmarks such as the George Washington Bridge, which is in the game,
yep.
Federal Hall, even New
also.
York City Police Station, where Shinkawa, one of the guys on the team, dressed up in a bomb suit, a piece of equipment that later served as the inspiration for the design of the Fatman character.
Okay, cool. It's a bomb suit.
Yeah, so that they were like, oh, wow, look at that. Maybe we should design our character to look like that. One thing that Stillman says about Fatman here.
Yeah.
We're leaning into these mimetic
I have a lot to
things
say
here.
about this.
I didn't teach him the most important thing, I had to tell him. There are some things you have to pass on. The trick is to know which one.
That is the trick.
That is the trick.
And this game...
The one weird trick.
Yes, that's the one weird trick, is to know which ones to pass on. That is also the hardest thing to discern.
Yep. All I taught him were skills, and now I have to stop him from using it to destroy us all. So again,
he didn't teach
a lot of this dialogue. Like if you're paying attention to it, it's really all leaning into the same thing.
Yeah.
The trick is to know which one of the things that you can pass on you should.
Right.
This is all leading into the mimetic theme going on here.
Do you have more lines from him?
Regarding Plissken, but not regarding memes, if you have some.
Yeah, Peter Stillman, he says, I have no children of my own, and I thought I found a son in him, right? I have no children of my own.
Yes.
Selfish gene. Like, we're going back to genes.
Yeah.
My genetic line is over. It's done. The genes are not moving forward. Like, genetically, I have no children.
So what do people do?
Medically, I thought I found a child.
What do people tend to do when they can't genetically pass on? They find someone to mentor. They find someone to teach or pass on their knowledge to.
Somehow.
It's the next best thing.
It's the next best thing.
In evolution.
Yes.
That's actually the more important thing this game, I think, is trying to argue than the genes. But biologically, when you realize you can't, that's what you tend to fall on.
The ideal is that you do both. But between the two, the memes are, and that's what he's arguing. Like, it's not enough just to like physically be able to do stuff. Like you've got to do the right thing.
Yeah.
That's way more important. And how you learn that is through having a teacher, mentor, parent, something like that. And he says, when I was something like that to somebody else, I neglected it. I did not teach him when to use his skills. I only taught him what to do. I only taught him the material, the physical, the stuff. I didn't give him relationships. I didn't give him meaningful experiences. I didn't instill with him higher values. I just told him what to do.
The wrong memes. Yeah. Maybe not the wrong ones, but wrong in the sense that only these are wrong.
Yes.
They need to be paired with these also.
Sure.
And I didn't pass those.
Yeah. It's kind of, I mentioned a while ago about like learning Taekwondo and how I was really upset. I was really upset that the first rule was when not to fight. And I was like, this is so dumb. I'm done with you. I was upset about that because I wanted to learn how to fight. My
next note there after that was, he starts questioning Plissken's story about being a SEAL. Right?
Yes, and is that at least not in part because when they first meet Peter Stillman, Snake says something like "Semper Fi," and I can't remember what else he says, but he's basically saying Marine like slogans.
Yes, he's using the wrong
Peter
slogans.
Stillman is like that ain't no SEAL.
He says "Semper Fi," and he also says "Who dares wins."
Yeah, who dares wins.
There's two things that Plissken says in that scene. So what Peter Stillman says after Plissken leaves is that man's no SEAL.
Yeah.
I don't even think he's a Navy man. And Ryan's like, what? And he says, Semper Fi. That's Marine Corps talk.
See, you would only know that from knowing people and forming relationships, not by playing a video game for 20,000 hours and then thinking that you can do secret missions now. So the things Raiden's missing out on, it's not just you weren't there, point. You don't know. It's you haven't talked to people who do this stuff. You're just alone in your little VR headset.
World, yeah.
If you talked to people, you would know, like, this is basic stuff. Like, everybody knows the general slogans for, not everybody, but people in the military know this in any form. And yet Raiden is a top high performing super secret soldier. And he doesn't know that. Like, he is missing heavily on a lot of this stuff. Like, but he's got the VR sneaking mission 60. But he doesn't have I have a friend in the Marines. He doesn't have that.
Normally, team leaders stay in the CP or command post. We're talking about SEALs. And give orders with those headphones that he's wearing.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, SEALs keep their officers away from the field. And who dares wins is a motto of the British Special Air Service.
Ah, that's it.
Is he one of the terrorists then? No, somehow I don't think so. If there's someone to suspect, I'd put my money on you.
I love that. That was so good. That's so good. It's like, hey, I'm working with you because I have to, but I don't know you. And I don't know if I can trust you.
Yeah.
And this is right. Video games tend not to do this, but this game went there, right? It went there. He's pointing the finger at us. Usually in a game, when you see a nice person that you don't kill, they trust you and you know to trust them because you technically can't kill them even if you tried.
Yes.
So, I can trust him, I guess. He's a good guy. Yeah, he doesn't trust us at all, right? And he's saying that we could be the ones kind of subverting the whole operation here.
Right.
I loved that line. It took me by surprise. It took me by surprise, but
I loved it. I wrote here, as Raiden moves forward to dispose of the bombs, he's contacted by Deep Throat.
Deep Throat.
Another callback to Shadow Moses. Again, how many times are we going to have something happen that calls back to Shadow Moses and is similar to the Shadow Moses operation? Campbell says that Gray Fox, who was codenamed Deep Throat in that game, cannot actually be there, right? Because he died. Right. In the Shadow Moses incident.
A pretty convincing death, too.
Yeah, let's just say, let's just say this time for real, like there's no way.
Definitely not.
And we actually did see that. We were there. We were there. We were Snake in that one. We saw that happen. Though, that being said, in Metal Gear's world of nanomachines, like, who fetching knows what kind of magic can bring people back to life. But let's just say it's not Gray Fox.
It's not Gray Fox. He did.
So Rose ends up talking about the Godzilla story. I wanted to talk about this real quick. I do
too, because this is so good. So Rose, I'm just going to call her Rose. She, it's funny because she calls once again and it's like, hey, so about April 30th, do you remember what it means? And Raiden's like, oh, I don't really know. And then they just kind of start reminiscing with each other. I actually really like this moment. It's really fun. They start reminiscing and, oh, do you remember when we first met? Yeah, you were out over there at like some museum and you thought that, or I said that King Kong climbed the Empire State Building and you said it was the Chrysler Building. And she's like, oh, yeah. And then you said, then I said the Chrysler Building was Godzilla. And she's like, yeah, I remember that. We argued for so long, for like hours. And then finally we decided to resolve the debate by watching the movies at his house like that night.
Well, didn't they go to a museum first?
Oh, yeah, they went to a museum first.
And then like found out he was right. Then they went their separate ways. Then they end up by coincidence coming back together, then they went and watched the movies.
You're right. It was when they re-met later on that they watched the movies and went to the top of the state building and all that.
Right.
But what's really interesting, is the fact that Kojima isn't a huge fan of us as video game players. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't bring this up so much, but Kojima is giving us the power fantasy in this game, right? Okay. Most games do this. I understand that. But he's criticizing us while giving it to us, right? So it's like take this thing and boom, smack us in the face. But he's also giving us something of the same thing in our relationship with Rose, which is Rose shows up and is like, nuh-uh, it's this other thing. And Raiden's like, nuh-uh, it's my thing. And Raiden was right about both things. He was right about Godzilla and King Kong.
Being right in the relationship all the time is a different kind of power fantasy.
It is. It really is. He gets to be right. He's strong. He's the power fantasy. There's this girl that likes him a lot, even though he doesn't have to tell her everything about his personal life. And he doesn't remember the important dates, but he does remember the things about movies, right? He remembers this stuff and he can teach her stuff. And then she can sit down and learn and he can take care of her and be the one who helps her along. I'm not saying this is wrong or bad in general. I'm just saying this is the type of relationship that men want. In their, like, if you're left to your own devices, if your anima, if you could just turn your anima into a person and sit it next to you and have it behave the way you would want it to behave, it would behave kind of like Rose a little bit. Like Kojima is kind of pointing the finger at the player a little bit, being like, hey, this is what you want, isn't it? Isn't this what you want? Here is the kind of relationship that you would love to have, isn't it? I don't know that I should say much about it, except we are going to revisit this a little bit later.
Yes.
It's fascinating the way that it all happens and the fact that it could have been he was right about one and she was right about the other. They could have done it in different ways, but the fact that they had him be right about both, would things have gone the same way if Raiden went to the museum and found out he was wrong?
Yes.
Would he have been so happy to see her next time?
Was he still interested?
Would he have been as interested in her?
Would he have been embarrassed and not wanted to?
Exactly.
Good point.
Things happened in a specific way so that his ego could be well kept, right? Mm-hmm. His ego has been well taken care of throughout the VR missions, throughout everything. He's a very important person. He has told this. I don't know. I can't do this. I want to talk about the end of this game. I don't want to not talk about the end of this game. All right.
We'll get there. That's a good enough setup for now.
Okay, perfect.
I think so. Okay. I think that's
delete
well
everything I say
said.
that is even hinting at the end of game stuff. Though. I don't want to be hinting at it. But there's something really deep happening with his relationship too that is playing into this whole thing, which is utterly fascinating. And I love every minute of it. It's actually really fun and really good.
It's great. I'm going to make a call. I think we should actually stop there.
Okay.
For today, we still didn't get quite to Fatman yet. But
we're
close.
Hour 30?
We're close, but we're at about an hour and 35 minutes. So I'm going to call it there, and we will continue on next time.
Okay. We're going to be starting off with a bang next episode then, because my next note is like deep stuff about the theme of this game, and we're jumping into it, especially with Peter Stillman. So
all right,
pay close attention.
That's where we'll pick up next time.
It's like the core of this whole game.
As far as where to play to, I mean, like. If I'm off the top of my head, go through the Vamp boss fight.
That's after that. Right?
We probably won't make it that far, but
I think we'll get to President.
At least play up to that point, and definitely through which I think happens before then. It does, because you go to the president first, you have that whole conversation, and then you go save EE, and then actually you fight Vamp before. Because that's on the way to go get EE.
Yeah, so it's after the president.
So
I think we won't get past the president. But
yeah.
We'll see.
At least through the conversation with the president. But just to be
go to the
extra
next
safe,
boss after
fight
that.
Vamp and maybe get through the EE section. But we probably won't get that far because anyway.
This game's proving to be a slow trudge, but I freaking love it.
It
I'm
needs
very
it.
excited.
It needs it. I think all this is important to talk about. So we'll see you next time. Peace out.